Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Thursday, January 9th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? That chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, where people have been stepped through the worksheet process, and if you choose to listen to them, even repeatedly, they can turn into a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Drag-On Kling-On game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives, and secondarily because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. And if you have any of those to share with us, we'd appreciate you doing so. You can email me at mindshifters-academy.org, mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a comment or a question from you through email, we will address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. And we greatly appreciate whenever anybody chooses to do that, because it makes it so much easier for us to live into our intention with this work when we know how it's landing for people. And if you are listening through the web at live.needle.com/drmichaelryce, and you would like to make a comment or talk to us live, you'll need to download the Needle app from your app store. That's NEDL. And once you do that, follow the instructions for how to type a chat comment or raise a hand to be talking to us live. And we greatly appreciate that as well, because, as I said, anytime people give us input about how these things are landing for them, it makes it so much easier for us to live into the intention to be of service. I just finished a session with someone, and the theme of the session was the idea of being able to be increasingly more and more honest about whatever issues I struggle with or whatever fears I might have. Almost as though when I hold on to a fear or I try to justify a fear or any negative thought, it is like putting on an armor. It's like wrapping myself in some kind of protective gear, whether you want to think of it as bubble wrap or an armor and a shield and a helmet and a sword. And as we were having the session and talking back and forth about this, I was reminded of several stories that Guy Finley has told over the years that relate to this very thing, where the prize has been stolen. Most often in his stories, it is a destination that my teacher or my father told me to go reach, or it is the princess who's been kidnapped and being held in a tower. And as Guy Finley is clear about whenever he's telling these stories, he says these are all spiritual stories, and every aspect, every character in the story represents an aspect of you as the spiritual seeker. And so whenever it's a princess who's been kidnapped and hidden in the tower, the princess is a reference to Sophia, wisdom, gentleness, wide open, emotional, available, an inner wisdom. And when my inner wisdom is unavailable to me, I need to find a way to reconnect with it. And so that's the essence of these stories. And so often when that happens in these stories, he creates the picture where it's the knight in shining armor that goes out to rescue the princess. And the armor is full armor. There's a helmet, there's a shield, there's sword, there's leggings and boot coverings and the whole 9 yards. And in each of those stories, the only way to get the resolution that is sought after, which is the freeing the princess or reconnecting with Sophia, your inner wisdom, is stripping off the armor and going in naked. And for each of us, that's going to look like something different. Because what's my armor? What is it that I'm using to hide from myself that which I'm afraid of, or that which I'm afraid of looking at? Another situation, I'm dealing with several people in my caseload right now who have very unpleasant life circumstances unfolding, where they may be losing their house, or they may be going through a divorce, or they may be trying to fend off someone who's verbally or emotionally attacking them. And so that brought to mind another story from Guy Finley. And he tells the story of a great king of really a massive kingdom. And when his son and daughter come of age, he calls them to him and sends them out on a mission to explore an area outside of his kingdom and develop it and establish a relationship with the people and the resources and claim that kingdom, that new kingdom, for their father. And they're all excited. It's like, great, I'm going to have power, I'm going to have authority. And he outfits them with an army and supplies, and yet the territory that the king already owns, that the king reigns over, is massive. So they're journeying for weeks before they ever even get to what they could consider the edge of their father's kingdom. And then it's another journey of many days before they're out in the territory that he wants them to claim. And they've had all kinds of adventures and challenges, and they've learned and grown. And they get out there, and they have a challenge of learning the language and the customs of the people and finding a way to connect with them in such a way that they'll work cooperatively. And then they start to work the land, and they till the soil, and they plant, and they bring the seeds that they've brought. And at the end of that first year, they're pulling in the harvest, and they're sitting in their big tent, and they're sitting back with the spoils of their hard work, and they're just thrilled. And they're having a party, and all of a sudden they hear a thunderous rumbling noise. And they go to the edge of the big tent, and they look out, and here across the horizon, as far as the eye can see, is stretched. They're being charged by a massive army, riding on horses and marching, all of them wearing black uniforms with white trim. And so they've worked hard for this, and they're there on the orders of their father, and they're going to defend this. And so they get their army, that the white uniforms with black trim, and they go marching out and hoping they can prevail. And there's no prevailing. They get wiped out. And so they recognize they're going to lose, and they retreat, and they take what they can, and they move on even farther away from their father's kingdom, out into another desolate area, and they start over. And another year goes by, another arduous set of challenges, and now they're into 2 years, and they're finally starting to make another home for themselves and claiming this kingdom for their father. This time they've got a building, and they're having their party of celebration, and there's a thunderous noise. They knew what it was. They remembered the noise from before. And again, they look out through the windows of the parapet, and they see massive, even bigger than before, an army clad in black uniforms with white trim. And because their father told them to do this, and because they know they would be embarrassed to go home registering as a failure, they go out to meet the battle, and hoping against hope they can prevail. There's no prevailing. They get wiped out again. Now this cycle repeats 7 times. And each time it happens, the prince and princess have a conversation about how maybe we should go back and tell Dad, no, we can't go back as failures, and then they end up going through the cycle again. Finally, after the 7th time this has happened, they decide, we got to go back and talk to Dad. We're doing something wrong, or there's something out of line. So they make the long, long trip back. It's months now to travel back to their father's kingdom. Hoping I'm back. And there was a disruption because of a technical failure at this end. And they get to their father's kingdom, and they make it to the throne room, and the throne room is empty. Well, now, these 2 people were raised in the kingdom. They feel like they're at home, so they go make themselves at home and get a rest and get their troops all billeted, and they're waiting for their father to return so they can discuss this very difficult situation with them. And after a while, the prince is still sleeping, but the princess gets up and she starts walking around the kingdom that she was raised in. And she realizes that, there's a part of it that she's rarely explored. And she decides, I'm older now, I'll go over here and explore this part of the kingdom. She gets on her horse and starts prancing around. Eventually, she turns the corner in one of these ravines, and she sees a massive building at the far end of the ravine. And she's curious, but it's her home, so she feels entitled. So she goes and opens the doors to this massive building, and what do you think she finds? An endless supply of black uniforms with white trim. And she's horrified. And it hits her. She recognizes, oh my gosh, this was my father's doing, kicking us out of all of these accomplishments we'd made, stripping things away from us time and time again. And she goes off in a rush to get her brother, to bring him back to show him this. And as she leaves that building with all those uniforms, she's furious. But by the time she rides back to get her brother up and they ride back, it's starting to dawn on her. And she throws the doors open and lets her brother see this extensive supply of black uniforms with white trim. And the realization hits the brother, and he's furious. But now the sister is starting to get it. And she says, wait a minute, calm down. I think I understand. And the prince is saying, what do you mean you understand? How could our father do this to us, stripping away from us everything that we've gained? And she said, I think he needed us to learn a lesson that we couldn't learn any other way. And the prince says, what do you mean? What lesson? She said, I think what he needed us to understand is there's no place we'll ever go that isn't his kingdom. And that we are going to have to continue to stretch and grow. Otherwise, we're going to sit and be content with what we've already accomplished and then just rot in our stagnation. That the process of life is to meet whatever comes to us as though it is coming for us, to be a challenge so we can stretch and grow, rather than that it's happening to us as a punishment. And then Guy Finley would talk at length about, we have options. Just like the Way of Mastery says, we choose how we want to interpret and respond to whatever we encounter in this flow of life. And as we choose to interpret and respond to what we encounter in this flow of life, we create our experience of life. And in another talk, Guy Finley says, you know what? You have the ability to choose however you interpret and respond to life. So what if you looked at every event that occurs in your life, whether it's a minor illness or a major illness or your house burning down like is happening in the California area right now? What if you chose to look at everything that occurs in your life through the filter that says, this is life asking you, hey, Tim, knock on the door. Would you like to know what's keeping you from knowing me and loving me more fully? Any upset you have that you generate inside of you as you judge what's happening in life as bad or wrong, all of those negative emotional states and tension, they are exactly what's keeping you from knowing and loving life itself more fully. And that's how I read this story from Guy Finley. The idea that life itself is just this constant extension of the creative energy. You arose as a physical entity, as a spiritual being in a physical body because of that energy. As Michael Singer says in one of his presentations, every atom, every molecule that you see in your body and the bodies of the people you interact with and the chair you're sitting on and the walls of the building that surround you, every one of those things began as stardust. And there's been a flow of this extension of creation that, according to our current scientific models, is about 13.84 billion years, that has led to everything that you have in your life today. And Michael Singer invites us to just examine the silliness of thinking that my conscious logical mind, which literally forgot to take home my drink mugs yesterday from the office so they could be cleaned and refilled and brought back today, that mind knows what's right or wrong in the world better than the flow of life itself. And so what if I choose, and it's just an invitation, you don't have to do this, but what if I choose to look at every event in life as just the next set of blessings coming my way, maybe disguised as the upsets and the traumas that I don't want to deal with. In other talks, Guy Finley says, the lessons we need to learn in life ride into our life on the back of the events we do not want. And we can determine very, very clearly the importance of the lesson because it will be directly proportional to how much we do not want the events that that lesson is riding in on. So the more important the event, the less I want to, or the more important the lesson, the less I want to deal with the event that's going to teach me that. Well, as we were reading the past 3 days from A Course of Love, and it's talking about learning about love, you can't talk about love, you can't describe attributes of love, because love doesn't have attributes. Love is this energy of creation. It's like the wind. You can't see it directly, but you can feel the effects. It's like any other elemental force. That love itself as an elemental force, as this energy of creation expressing in form, is invisible in the sense of, our five senses or our scientific measuring devices. And yet, it is foundational to everything we experience. So, A Course of Love is trying to tell us experience is the teacher. Can you put yourself, as Guy Finley would say, you can't learn from something that you think you're better than or you think you know more than. So to learn from anything, you must make yourself subordinate to that from which you would learn. That's just like Rainier Maria Rilke telling us or inviting us to learn to live in that questioning state without demanding answers, without formulating rigid statements of belief. And the benefit to that is that we stay in that wide open, flexible mind space with, neuroplasticity at its highest level. We've talked here before about the research that's been done with people that develop these more advanced brain scans and functional MRIs, and they get people all hooked up so they can read their brainwave activity in the different parts of the brain, and then they'll ask them a question that they can't know the answer to. So it's something like if I reach my hand into my pocket and I, shake what's in there and it makes a kind of a noise, and I say, so what do you think I might have in my pocket? Then the people whose brains are hooked up, their neural activity in certain parts of their brain goes right through the roof, because now they're questioning and they're weighing, and it seemed to make a noise. Maybe it's keys, maybe it's change, maybe it's a fingernail clipper, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, a key fob or something. And as long as they're guessing and haven't decided what it might be, their brain activity is highly elevated. And as soon as they decide, or I pull my hand out of my pocket and show them what it is, that brain activity in that area drops like a rock. And what we're invited to in the Course of Love and with Guy Finley's teachings and Rainier Maria Rilke is, in his writings, is learning to live in that open questioning state. Learning to put myself in a subordinate position to life itself. Learning to live with this active questioning in my mind. What's mine to do here? How can I be a blessing to myself and others? How can I turn this situation that I did not want into something more favorable? What might I do to uncover what's the meaning that I'm creating and placing on this neutral set of life events? Which, if I keep pouring enough of my mind energy into it, is going to create the tightness and the tension and the negative emotional states that I say I don't want and don't like. And again in this work, we keep trying to help people understand the degree to which we have all been conditioned, trained, brainwashed, if you will, to believe that our emotional states are the byproduct of the things that happen around us or the people outside of us, rather than the byproduct of an internal process that we are driving without realizing it. So, how are you looking at the world? Do you have words come up in your thoughts I'm so angry at her, at him, because of this, because of that. And when that happens and you recognize this attribution of cause and effect to people and things outside of you causing or affecting your internal emotional state, are you willing to question that? Are you willing to move out of this place of being right and feeling so solid because you're right and move into this open questioning state? Each of us has to answer that moment to moment. And if you're willing to start looking at everything with fresh eyes, or look at it, as I was talking about, Corinne Zupko talks about in her book, looking at situations that arise in her life, looking at it with her inner therapist, not handing it over to her inner therapist and say, you go deal with this while I'm over here complaining about it, but trying to find a way to look at life the way the Christ would look at it, the Christ mind within you would look at it, or look at it the way you believe the creator of this would look at it. A Course of Love says, to be compassionate as the creator is compassionate is to see as the creator sees. Again, I stress to you, this is not about looking upon misery and saying to yourself, you see it not. The Course of Love says, I'm not an advocate of heartlessness. I am an advocate of wholeheartedness. If you believe even the tiniest fraction of what is true, if you but believe that you are a small part of the creation, no bigger than a pinprick of light in the daunting sun, you still cannot believe in the reality of misery and despair. If you do, you believe that this is the state of the Creator as well. And if this were true, what hope would there be for misery's end? What light would there be in the universe that could end the darkness? So reverse this thought and see if it makes any more sense than it did before. In this scenario, a benevolent and loving Creator has extended its being into the creation of the universe and has somehow managed to extend what is not of the Creator to create what is unlike to its being in every way. Would you even attempt such folly? Would you conceive that? It's inconceivable. The only answer that's left is it's all part of the flow of life. And everything that I see that's unpleasant or challenging, I could choose to see as the stepping stones for me to learn to deal with life in a more flexible, compassionate, loving, creative way. I might look at these unpleasant circumstances that arise and continue to ask myself moment to moment, what's mine to do in this moment to be a blessing to myself and others, or to ease the suffering of another? Course of Love says, you believe that to know with your mind is a learning process that stands apart from all else that you are. And thus you can know without that knowing being who you are. You think that you can love without love being who you are. It doesn't make any sense. Nothing stands apart from your being. Nothing stands alone. All your attempts to keep things separate are but a reenactment of the original belief in separation that's made to convince yourself that that original false belief in separation, that original dream of separation, actually occurred. You do not stand separate and alone. At these words, your heart rejoices and your mind rebels. Your mind rebels because your mind is the stronghold of the ego. Your thought system is what has made the world that you see. The ego is the constant companion of this construction of this world you see. And yet, your mind rejoiced in the learning of all the teachings that have brought you here, congratulating itself on a feat that brought it to rest. It is from this rest that the heart begins to be heard. So again, here's the same message that we got in the Way of Mastery. In just, I think it's maybe just the 5th page, where it says, let into your mind the first axiom, just to begin on this journey to get where you say you want to go. Let into your mind the idea that nothing that you experience is caused by anything outside of you, and that you experience only the effects of your own choice. Again, this isn't saying that your mind creates all of the external experiences that you see unfolding in front of you. Your mind creates your interpretation and your response to it, your judgment and your perception about it. And so this says, we're building on this lesson by lesson, this thing that I'm choosing to call the way of the heart. And they acknowledge in the next few paragraphs, your mind is going to jump up and say, wait a minute, this isn't true. I didn't want my house to burn down. I didn't want my son to have a tumor. I didn't want X, Y, and Z financial hardship to make me lose my home. And so it responds and it says, by the way of the heart is not the way of the intellect. So your mind is going to jump up and argue against this first axiom. But your mind was never intended to be your master. It was designed to be the humble, and if you will pardon the expression, the very simple or stupid servant of the awakened heart. What is the awakened heart? The heart is that which feels all things, embraces all things, trusts all things, and allows all things. The heart, as we're talking about it here, is that in which the soul eternally rests. The heart is that which is beyond space and time, and it is that spark of the light of the mind of the Creator, which is called the Christ, or the Christ mind. And only in that will you find the peace that you seek. You'll discover that the pathway of awakening is not a pathway of avoidance. We just read in A Course of Love. This isn't a cold-hearted, oh, don't worry about suffering, it's not real. Again, I stress to you, it says in A Course of Love, this is not about looking upon misery and simply saying to yourself, I don't see it. Course of Love says, I'm not full truthfulness. It is also not a pathway of accomplishment and pride, but a pathway of releasing from the consciousness every hope and every wish to be special, to see yourself as having made progress, so that you can pound a fist upon the chest and spread your tail feathers. It is the transcendence of any hope of somehow getting the Creator's attention so that the Creator will look upon you and say, oh, you've been such a good person. Yes, 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 come on into the kingdom. You're welcome here now. The same theme, the same message. This is not about accomplishing, doing. It's about being. It's about choosing to see with different eyes. It's about dismantling the judgments. It's about understanding how distorting our process of perception is. It's about asking for something outside your conscious logical mind to teach you, to show you, to usher you into a level of experience you simply can't get by thinking your way there. a little bit later on in the Course of Course of Love, it says, "Do not believe in your failure or in the ego's success. All you have learned is still with you, regardless of your perception of the outcome of your learning. Your perception of an outcome within your control is all that needs to change. Remember, that cause and effect are one and the same. What you want to learn, you cannot fail to learn. If you turn your mind to learning, if you ask to be shown in this way, you will start to see differently. You will start to feel differently." Guy Finley says, "The Creator puts you in a world where the forces that can teach you will never leave you if you simply ask to be taught. If you simply make yourself subordinate to that which would teach you." So we're a little past the first half of this hour. Just want to remind people, if you're listening through live.needle.com/DRMICHAELRYCE, we're glad you're here. We hope it's useful for you. And yet, in order to make a comment or call in, you need to download the Needle app, N-E-D-L, the Needle app from your app store. And we greatly appreciate it. I'm looking at that same comment that someone just put in the chat room 23 minutes ago. It's fascinating that there was no notification that there was a comment there, but I have been checking, and there's no callers in the queue right now. So if you're interested, if you're one of the callers on the app or listeners who's using the app, feel free to touch the phone icon on your app and give us a call. Let us know how this is landing for you, or if you have questions about the interconnectedness of the message from the Way of Mastery to Guy Finley to A Course of Love. I had the recommendation from Susan, a caller Susan, a few days ago about interviewing Christian Sundberg, the author of the book A Walk in the Physical. So last night, before rolling over for bed, I went and found his email at walkinthephysical@gmail.com and send him an invitation to either be on this broadcast or the On Your Mind podcast hosted by Journey's Dream. So I will keep you posted if we get a response from him or anyone else. And it's a good time for me to mention that I'm always willing to entertain your suggestions about who I should interview, and or a book I should read, or a podcast I should listen to that's in line with these teachings that you think helps flesh it out and embellish it in certain ways that are useful for you. That's one of the hardest things about doing a weekly podcast, is finding good quality, interesting people to interview in line with whatever theme you're doing. And of course, for the Journey's Dream podcast, it's about helping rewrite the narrative on mental health to one in which optimal health and well-being are possible and expected. And you can find that work. It's another project I've donated my time to for the past 5+ years. You can find that at onyourmindpodcast.org, all one word, onyourmindpodcast.org, or at journeysdream.org/podcast. And there are almost 190 shows that have been posted there, and it's another valuable resource that I encourage people to use to find different ways to look at and different ways to help people manage mental health challenges as they arise in our lives. So, give us a call or type in a comment on the Needle app, and or we will move forward to lesson 3 or chapter 3 in the Course of Love. And in chapter 3 of the Course of Love, the title of the chapter is The First Lesson. And the text reads, "Love is, period. It teaches by being what it is, period. It does not do anything, period." So very clearly, love just is. And it teaches by being, not by doing. Love does not strive. It neither succeeds nor fails. It is neither alive nor dead. And thus, it always was and always will be. So, what else always was and always will be? Well, our scientists tell us energy always was and always will be. It was never, you can't create or destroy energy. It just changes its form. And so there are so many different ways that our mind wants to try and analyze these things and label them. And yet what we're talking about goes beyond what words can express. What is it? How can my mind wrap itself around an idea of something that's neither alive nor dead? It can't. Because my mind, that conscious logical mind, as the Way of Mastery talks about, can only work with the concepts that have been programmed into it. So, love is, love teaches by being what it is. Love does not do anything. Love does not strive. Love neither succeeds nor fails. Love is neither alive nor dead. And thus, it always was and always will be. Love is not particular to you as human beings. Love is in relationship to everything. All to all. Just as true knowledge cannot be learned, love cannot be learned. And you cannot be learned. All that you desire and cannot learn is already accomplished. It is accomplished in you. It is you. Now, how do you make sense of that in the world today? What does this mean about me for my job? Why would I go to the laundromat and wash my clothes if everything's already been accomplished? Why would I go to a job that I don't like to earn money to buy stuff if everything's already done? If I can't fail, if I've never failed and I can't ever fail, I was never alive and I'll never be dead. My mind's exploding trying to make sense of this at the conscious logical level. And so this reminds me of what Dr. Michael Ryce used to talk about when he would give his 2.5 or 4 hour workshops, and he'd start and say, I'm going to talk fast. I'm going to present concepts that are going to dramatically challenge everything you've ever learned, so don't try and keep up with it. Don't try and think logically through everything. Let it wash over you. Let yourself marinate in this. One of my favorite singer, songwriter, performers likes to tell people as she reads a spoken word piece, try to just sit here in the audience and take this in the way that an infant would take in a lullaby. If you're going to get through the reading of A Course of Miracles or The Way of Mastery or A Course of Love, you really have to do some of that suspending of that critical analysis of trying to make every different word you read or sentence that you read get crinkled down into these 9 bits that your mind can understand. So just let this marinate with you for a while. All that you desire and yet that you cannot learn has already been accomplished. It's in you. You are the fulfillment of this energy of love extending in form. You are a part of the creative process. You are a part of life itself unfolding. You don't need to do certain things to be of value. Michael Ryce likes to say, you have all the value you'll ever have simply because the Creator put the breath of life in you. And if you go back to what we just read from The Way of Mastery, this is a pathway that has us stepping away from every desire, every hope and wish to be special, or every desire to see yourself as having made progress. Step away from that and learn to spend time being and asking to be taught by life and the flow of life. Course of Miracles, or Course of Love, rather, goes on and says, all that you desire and cannot learn with your conscious logical mind is already accomplished. It is accomplished in you. It is you. Imagine the ocean, or the cheetah, or the sun, or the moon, or the Creator itself attempting to learn what they are. They are the same as you, and all of these exist within you. You are the universe itself. It is a shared universe with no divisions. There are no sections, no parts, no inside, no outside, no dreams, no illusions that people can escape or hide, disappear from, or cease to be. There is no human condition that does not exist in all humans. It's completely impossible for one to have what another does not have. All is shared. This has always been true and is endlessly true. Truth is truth. There are no degrees of truth. This is the very same message that's in The Way of Mastery, where it says over and over again, all minds are joined. Any thought you have about privacy is an illusion. Everything, I remember the old adage, never ask for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. I always thought of that as saying we're all connected. And whatever happens to the least of us happens to the greatest of us. Just watch what your mind wants to do, listening to messages like this. And as your mind generates tightness or tension or pushback against this, just soften and breathe and recognize, oh, there's something about this that challenges something I hold to be true and something that I'm invested in, that I'm identified with. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any response of tightness or tension or defensiveness. And then recognize, wait a minute, wherever you are, riding in a car, sitting in a chair in your office or at home, these are just sound waves coming through some electronic device, resonating in your ear. How could that be threatening? Just give yourself the gift of breathing and softening as you monitor what goes on inside of you as you listen to teachings like this or any other teachings. Step back into how we began this session today, talking about the essential need to reprogram our minds to the truth that we are all creating every emotion we experience. We are all creating every tightness and tension that arises within us. And we're doing it through a process of choosing an interpretation and a pattern of response to whatever arises around us in this flow of life. So the same is true as we read something that clashes with what you believe, or that raises so many questions that your mind goes on overload. It's okay if you want to fight against it. It's okay if you want to say no and scream and turn off the flow of electronic devices bringing this message to you. And you'll stay with what you've always had. You won't question it, you won't soften, you won't learn, you won't have a different experience. It's also okay if you want to soften and breathe and just notice where the tension is as it arises in you and say, well, this is pretty interesting. I just got full of vim and vigor and thought I would, call in and tell this guy he's full of baloney. Wow, that's a very strong reaction to some words being spoken, some vibration through some electronic pathway that reaches my ear. So the Course of Love goes on and asks us to recognize that you are not form, and nor is your real world. You seek the face of the Creator in form as you seek for love in form. Both love and the Creator are there, but they are not the form that your body's eyes see. Just as these words I'm speaking are just symbols of meaning that are far beyond the symbols and what the symbols can suggest. So too is everything and everyone around you, more than what they show up to be in your eyesight and in your mind, the pictures your mind creates. It's far more than what your mind can imagine when you meet someone. They are not a stranger, and they are not what you think they are. Even if they show up in a road rage incident, they're a being of brilliance and light who's either temporarily forgotten or yet to discover their brilliance. I was talking about this a day or two ago. There's an exercise that's suggested in the latter part of the Way of Mastery where it said, take a breath before you let the thoughts come in as you interact with someone and recognize there are no strangers. This is another being of brilliance and light standing in front of me. And they're either going to be in touch with that conscious awareness and extending that brilliance and light and that energy of creation that we call love, or they're going to be acting from a place where they've either temporarily forgotten or they've yet to discover that brilliance. And if I'm willing to do that as an exercise, it will dramatically change my experience of life. Course of Love goes on and says, to seek the face, in quotes, the face of the Creator, even in the form of Christ, is to seek what is forever without form. To truly see is to begin to see the formless. This reminds me of Yeshua saying he was asking to be shown how to see the shimmering radiance that lies behind the images his mind would create, the perceptions his mind would create. To see truly is to begin to see the formless. To begin to see the formless is to begin to understand what you truly are. All that you now see are but symbols of what is really there before you. And there is a glory beyond your deepest imaginings. And yet you persist in wanting only what your eyes can see and your hands can hold. You call these things real and all else unreal. You can close your eyes and believe that you're in the dark, but you will not believe that you are no longer real. Close your eyes on all that you've become accustomed to seeing, and you'll see the light. In the light that comes only to eyes that no longer see, you will find the Christ who abides in you. In the Christ, as the offspring of the Creator, and became physical man, he walked upon the world with a face much like your own, a body with 2 legs and 2 arms, 10 fingers, 10 toes, and yet you know this was not Jesus, nor was it a picture of the Christ. Jesus gave a face to love, as you do here as well. You are the face of love. You are the representation of this energy of creation expressing in form. And yet love did not attach itself to form and say, this is what I am. How can anything have form except in symbols? A family crest, a mother's ring, a wedding band, they're all the same, and yet they represent what they symbolize in form. There is no form that is not thus. A form is but a representation. You are not your body. You've heard us talk about this time and time again. What this is saying is there's a lot more to you than just your physical body. There's more to you than the choices you've made in your life and the actions that you've chosen. There's more to life than what you can see through the 5 physical senses, so-called physical senses. So we're winding down. We're near the end of our hour. We've got maybe 4 or 5 minutes left. If you're on the Needle app, feel free to type in a comment or raise your hand to make a comment here at the end of the hour. I will remind us that Michael and Jeannie are very preoccupied with supporting her son and his family with some physical challenges and medical issues, and if you would please send them light and love and blessings and prayers. So they will not be on live today, but they hopefully will be able to return next week. But the second hour today will be broadcast on Podbean. That's another app you can download from your app store and search for Mind Shifters or Mind Shifters Radio on Podbean, and you'll be able to hear the second hour today. Susan Bingham, you're in the
Hi, a couple of quick questions. Great show. I noticed on my app, this is for Yindi, the transcript stopped somewhere mid something. That's just an observation if he's busy trying to get the bugs out. And the second one, I was going to ask you about Michael and Jeannie, so I'm glad you mentioned them. And the third thing is there's a lot of clanking and funny sounds going. Are you doing multitasking, or is this something that's happening with the show?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm basically sitting in my office chair and reading parts of The Course of Love from my iPad and holding the Needle app on my phone in my other hand. So I'm not sure whether you're hearing squeaking in my chair but no,
No, it sounds as if you're doing dishes or something. So it might be something. I don't know what it might be, but I've never heard that before either. It sounds as if you're doing 25 things at once.
No, I'm sitting here solo in my office, and this is the only focus of my attention as I am trying to monitor the app and figure out what might be useful for me to say.
Well, the next time we meet, I came across, there's not enough time to read it now probably, but something by Shankara that I found in my journals from 2006. So this is well before I was on the radio show, and maybe it's before the radio show existed. But it's amazing how the wisdom is just there. And it was there then, and I copied out this long poem, admonition, how to handle life type of thing, which I may read some other time. I want to read it to myself first and get it all smoothed out before I do it. But I got it off a website that has the name Krishnamurti on it. And I know you have mentioned him as one of your teachers or someone you studied with, right? You studied with him?
I didn't study with him. I read his books.
Okay.
I read several of his books over and over and over again, much like The Way of Mastery back in the early 80s.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's a lot of wonderful wisdom out there, and I'm so glad you got a hold of Christian Sundberg. That's exciting. I hope he says
we'll see
yes.
if I got a hold of him or not. I sent the email off. We'll see. And
Yeah.
feel free to send that Shankara piece to me in an email. You know how to email me. So
Sure. Well, it's handwritten, but I will definitely, I can type it out and send it.
or you could find the link on the website. If you said it was on a website with
Well,
Krishnamurti's name on it, you
I
might
went,
search for it and find it.
I didn't find the translation that I like so much that's in my notebook. I found a variation of it. I'd like to send you this one because it's just so
Okay.
great. Okay.
Excellent. I
All
look
right.
forward to it.
Okay. Thanks, Tim.
All right. So just a reminder to everyone that Michael and Jeannie's second hour will be on Podbean today. And please send them your thoughts and prayers and blessings and financial support if you're able. And I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Blessings.